If your personal item on the plane looks like this, or this, then you are making a big mistake, and this video is going to tell you why. Unfortunately, these days, there is one major problem with air travel, and that's the fact that even when you're allowed a carry-on bag, a lot of the time they're not gonna let you bring it on board. Pretty much every flight I've been on this past year has been so full that they've either asked people or forced people to actually check their carry-on bags at the gate, even when they were well within their allowance limits. So your only guarantee these days really is that your underseat bag, also known as your personal item, is gonna come on the plane with you. Anything else is not guaranteed. And that's why it's very important that you learn to pack it well and learn to maximize the allowance that you're given. Luckily, that's what today's video is all about. How to pack the perfect personal item for every single flight. Now, in case you're new here, hi, I'm Christina from happytowander.com. And this channel is all about practical travel tips from someone who's been there, done that, so be sure to like and subscribe if that sounds like your kind of thing. Now, let's start with step one, which is of course researching what your personal item allowance is and finding a bag that fits. Now, the first mistake you want to avoid is just assuming that any bag that fits under the seat is going to be allowed on board, because unfortunately, that is not the case. These days, just like with carry-on bags, every airline has their own specific dimensions that they'll allow for your personal items. So you have to make sure in advance of your trip that you are researching specifically for the airline that you're flying with. Now, in today's video, I am going to be showing you all my best tips with the V4 Bento Bag by Nomad Lane, who is this week's sponsor. I'm really excited to show and test this bag for you guys just because I feel like out of all the personal item bags that I've read about on the internet, this one has had the most rave reviews. And on a vein level, it's just really pretty. It's also compatible with most US airline underseat bag restrictions and is of course designed to fit under the seat so that you don't need to rely on any of the overhead compartment spaces, because these days, trust me, there is barely any space unless you're right at the front of the line. Now, one of the main things that I always look for these days with a personal item bag is something that's soft like this one. So not something that's a hard shell, because when you are asked to put it in the sizer, which is how they determine whether or not it fits within the restrictions, you're gonna want something that has a bit more flexibility and a bit more give so that you're able to squish it a little bit to fit in the sizer. I also pretty much only use personal item bags that are black, and the reason for that is just because most of the time airline employees are looking for bags that look oversized, and as we know, black is a slimming color, so when you have a black bag, it's gonna look a bit smaller and you're probably less likely to get pulled aside to put it in the sizer. And finally, what's ideal for a personal item bag is something that has a bunch of different compartments, especially because when you're at the airport and on the plane, you're gonna be taking stuff in and out constantly. So if you want that organization, it's good to have a bag that has different compartments. So what's really cool about this bag in particular is that it does open and pack like a suitcase. So you are able to open it up, pack and repack really easily, especially because there seems to be a dedicated compartment for pretty much everything you can imagine, from a padded laptop sleeve for laptops up to 16 inches, as well as a water bottle pouch on the outside that you can zip up when you're not using it. There's also an open pouch on the outside that you can slip your phone into or your wallet into, as well as a stretchy key leash, and this sleeve that zips open so that you can slip it over your carry-on suitcase if you're bringing one. The bag also comes with a very cute electronics pouch as well as a toiletries bag as well, so that really everything has its place, which can be very, very handy when you're going through the airport. Now let's move on to step number 2, which is deciding what goes inside your personal item. Over the years, I have seen a lot of things at the airport, including panic packing and repacking at the gate when someone's been forced to check their bag. Now, the best defense against this really is to just make sure that any essential item that you need for the plane is actually in your personal item and not in your carry-on. Now, I know this sounds like common sense, but I have actually witnessed people check their passports in with their gate check bag. So I do think it's important to emphasize this point. So take note that for your personal item, you should definitely be bringing any important medication, anything valuable that you don't want to lose, like any electronics like your laptop or iPad, as well as any sentimental items, any in-flight essentials like your headphones or chapstick or anything that you might need for the flight. And a lot of people forget about this one, but I think it's so important, one backup outfit in case your bag gets lost. On that note, I usually go by 2 general rules of thumb. The first one is, if my bag gets lost, will I be able to survive the first night with everything that's in my personal item bag? If the answer is no, I'm going to repack and rejig and make sure the answer is yes. The second rule of thumb is to just ask yourself, what would I be absolutely devastated to lose? Anything that you answer to that question should also make its way into your personal item and not your carry-on or your checked bag. Now, the next mistake you want to avoid is forgetting to research what isn't allowed to be in a checked bag. So I think most people are familiar with the things that you're not allowed to bring on a plane, period. Things like fireworks or any weapons or things that just clearly don't belong on a plane. But there are some items that are specifically not allowed in checked bags, but people are far less familiar with these rules. So this is your warning to pack anything that needs to be on the plane in your personal item as well. So some of the most common examples of this would be anything that has a larger lithium-ion battery. So practically speaking, what that would mean is anything that has a rechargeable battery, you should make sure that is in your personal item. So some examples of items that you can't have in your checked bag include portable chargers or battery packs, as well as any hair appliances or hair tools that have a rechargeable battery. So for instance, I've only just realized very recently that the hair straightener I bring on every single trip actually isn't allowed to be in my checked bag. Luckily, I've never put it in my checked bag just because it's expensive, and anything expensive and valuable I always do put in my personal item. But just FYI, if you're someone that travels with hair tools or really anything that has a rechargeable battery, make sure that is going in your personal item and not in your checked bag and not even in your carry-on these days, just in case they do put it in the hold. And I'm not an expert on why these items aren't allowed in the hold, but I have heard that it's basically because these batteries, if they catch fire, it's better to spot the fire in the cabin and put it out compared to not catching the fire at all if a fire breaks out in the hold. So there you go. Moral of the story, make sure you're packing anything that's not allowed in your checked bags in your personal item. Now it's time to move on to step 3, which is very exciting. It's time to finally pack the bag. Whoop, whoop. Now, what I recommend is laying out all your essential items out flat and making sure that you have every single essential item, as I mentioned before. It's just a good rule of thumb generally to keep these items as close to you as possible, so under the seat in front of you is always a good bet. Now, when you're packing your personal item, a very important rule that I think a lot of people forget about is the fact that you should be packing based on the order of likelihood that you'll need it at the airport. So obviously, the things that you know you'll need at the airport being on top versus the things that you probably won't need at the bottom. Especially if you're packing with a backpack, for instance, the last thing you want to do once you get to security is rummaging through your entire backpack just to find your liquids that are at the bottom. So make sure you are stacking things in order of likelihood of usage. Now, of course, there are specific items that will definitely need to come out at some point during your airport and flight experience. So things like your passport, liquids, any large electronics like laptops and iPads, as well as charging cables, are generally things that you're going to be using either at the airport or on the plane, so make sure those are well within reach. So now let's start loading up our personal item bag, again starting with the items that we are the least likely to use at the airport. Now, once all your essentials are in, then you can assess how much extra space you have. For me personally, again, because I always like to prepare as if my bags are gonna get lost, I like to make use of any extra space that I have. So in this case, I clearly have some extra space for more clothes, for instance. What's really great about the different compartments in this Nomad Lane bag is that with the different zippered compartments, you actually get the bonus of some compression. So if you wanted to bring something puffy like a vest or a jacket or a sweater, you could easily use the zippered compartment to kind of compress it down. Another really handy tool you can use are compression packing cubes. So assuming that your personal item doesn't have a weight restriction, what you can actually do is use these compression packing cubes to put in a bunch of clothes and kind of compress it into a tight brick. And that way you can actually fit a lot more stuff inside your personal item. And if you're packing for a shorter trip, I honestly think you could fit pretty much a week's worth of clothing inside this personal item if you wanted to. So definitely play around if you're hoping to pack very minimalistically, if you don't want to pay for a carry-on bag or whatever, do try to see how much you can fit in because you'll probably be very surprised. All right, once everything is packed, give it a once over. Make sure you have your essentials like your passport and your phone, and you're good to go. Now, I hope that was helpful. Be sure to like and subscribe for more travel videos just like this one, and I'll see you next time. Bye!